Sometimes life gives us lemons. Sometimes it gives us lemonade. Other times it gives us something entirely out of left field that makes us say, WTF. But no matter what obstacles come, there is most often a way out on the other side, and we are once again victorious. My name is Dr. Rowe, and you are listening to my podcast about resilience. Every guest shares a tragedy to triumph story to give listeners like you the inspiration to push through every single day. Listen now as my next guest shares how they were life-jacked.
What do you do when your dream job turns into a nightmare? My name is Dr. Rowe, and this is LifeJack, the Resilience Podcast. LifeJack is when an unfortunate or unplanned event happens to jack with your life. My guest for this week, Dr. Nikia Smith, a Las Vegas anesthesiologist who moved to Las Vegas for her dream job after getting married, but then quickly realized her dream job shortly turned into a nightmare. Her entire journey to become a doctor was filled with resilience and grit. But this particular job was the peak of her burnout journey and the start of her self-discovery and self-love lifestyle. She got herself a therapist, started Pilates, set boundaries, and started her company, Forged in Fire. She is grateful to be able to share her journey of how she learned to choose herself and not let a job run her into the ground. Hi, Dr. Smith. Welcome. Thank you so much for being a guest on my show. How are you?
Hi, Dr. Rowe. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here, and I'm feeling just blessed. So I'm happy to be here.
So awesome. How is the weather right now? It's June. How is the weather right now in Vegas?
Oh, girl, we are getting heat advisories every day. We've already hit the over 100 degrees, so it's going to be a long summer.
Well, how do you enjoy living in Vegas? I know I'm a person, Vegas is one of my favorite cities. I have two favorite cities that I have to visit pretty much every year. That's Vegas and Miami. But I don't know, I couldn't imagine living there.
So I was a little bit skeptical at first because I've only been to the Strip, but when I came to explore, like moving and being out in the outskirts where the burbs and where the people who live here actually live, I was pleasantly surprised. I do love Vegas. There's a lot of things to be done and a lot of good food to be eaten. And there's so much good food and good entertainment outside the Strip as well. So I'm very happy to be here.
So I've always wondered, if you live there in Vegas, I mean, how often do you visit the Strip? Or it's kind of like, no, that's the tourist area. We hardly ever go there.
We mostly hardly ever go there, but occasionally there'll be a new restaurant or a show. Like, we're going to go to the Strip to see Usher. Okay, we're definitely going to go see Usher. So we do go for the shows. We do go for a few restaurants, but mostly we just wait for people to come into town and then go to the Strip when the tourists are in town.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I would love to see Usher. I haven't made his show yet. And then I found out that Jodeci, which is my all-time favorite group in the whole entire world, I had a whole wall dedicated to Jodeci back in the early 90s.
Yes, they're on my list for the summer. They extended their residency. I said, okay, they're on my list. I gotta go. That's worth going to the Strip for, I actually
saw them in concert for my birthday, August 2023, this past August, and it was this dream country. All four members, so it wasn't just Casey and JoJo, so I was in heaven.
Yes.
It's interesting because a lot of young children, they have it in their mind they want to grow up and be a doctor, right? But you decided to be an anesthesiologist. So what initially drew you to this profession?
That's hilarious. Yeah, I did. I wanted to be a doctor for as long as I can remember. And I'm just like, I don't know what kind, but I used to just watch a lot of TV, like back in the day, and Dr. 90210 was on. And I'm like, maybe I want to be a plastic surgeon. And then I was watching the show, and I'm like, no, I want to be that person, like the person behind the drape. And so I wanted to be an anesthesiologist since then. And so I was always just, a good student, a hard worker. And it wasn't until I got into college where I met some outside resistance, and that really made the journey like a lot harder. I had one professor say something along the lines of like, if I couldn't get into medical school, what makes you think you can? And I was a little bit taken aback, you know. Then I had an actual advisor call me into the office, and she was like, I strongly suggest you get a new letter of recommendation because one of the ones that were submitted was not favorable. And I was crushed because, you know, you only ask people who you think will write you a good letter to write you a good letter. And when I found out who the professor was that wrote me the letter, I never got to read the letter, so I don't know exactly what was said. It could have just been bland or like just, you know, kind of basic. I'm not sure. But this professor had actually sought me out to be a tutor for her class and then wrote me a non-favorable letter. So that was when I really started to get into some of the struggles mentally, because I'm just like, wow, like they are doubting me so much. Am I thinking too highly of myself? Like maybe I should take a step back. But luckily I have a good tribe and, you know, good parents. And they were like, if this is what you want to do, then you have to press forward. So I persisted, and I did not let these outside people keep me from my dream. And then I made it to medical school. And in medical school, it was really amazing. I had a great mentor, an amazing anesthesiologist named Dr. Holliday, and he was really a guiding light, and he just made sure that we got me there. And I appreciate him and his support.
Because being an African-American woman, and I'm an African-American woman, and so, you know, we really sometimes have to talk and speak to these types of issues, meaning outside of Grey's Anatomy coming, right? I'll be honest, I had not a Black female medical doctor on the TV screen, much less thought about a Black female medical doctor, let alone a Black doctor, period. Now, growing up, I can say that my parents tried as much, you know, as possible to try to find doctors who look like us, to, you know, kind of give us that image, to make us, you know, for my sisters and I, for us to see, you know, people in medical professions. I mean, other than Bill Cosby playing, you know, Heathcliff Huxtable, I was a doctor also. But around me, not knowing, not many medical doctors who look like me, right? And then, of course, there's Doc McStuffins came out, and that was really awesome. But
it was. She was adorable.
Yes, absolutely. So do you feel, you know, because sometimes we don't want to think that our race or our gender has anything to do with the troubles that we, you know, are facing. But do you think that even the trouble that you had trying to get to medical school, do you think that your race or your gender perhaps played a factor?
I'm not really sure. I agree with you. I didn't really see any Black doctors, so I was kind of just like, maybe I am dreaming too big or thinking too much, because like I didn't see them. I just said, oh, I just saw a doctor and said, I want to be like that. I didn't have a Black doctor or a Black female doctor to look up to, and I just was hopeful. And interestingly, and I did go to an HBCU for undergrad, so those experiences did happen to me in a predominantly Black environment. So I'm not sure that my race and gender played as much into it, but I do think that there was some degree that it is your race and gender. And sometimes your own people just don't want to see you win if they couldn't win in that way. So it's hard, right? You're balancing it. You want people around you to be supportive of you, and you can. I found a great tribe. I had found a great group of people who supported me and got me here. But it required, you know, being proactive. And clearly, there's always will be haters in the way. So,
yes, unfortunately so. Now, you said you got married and moved to Vegas, and you know, and also congratulations on obviously you finished medical school and you got through it, because you are an anesthesiologist practicing. So that's amazing. Now, what makes this particular job a dream job? Like, what were all the, you know, benefits that on paper or that made it a dream job?
All right. So basically, you know, jobs are just exchanging time for money, and you would like to exchange the amount of time that you would, you know, you find ideal for amount of money that is livable and, you know, agreeable. And so this job, basically, they offered me a good amount of money to work hours that I felt were very reasonable. And I was like, okay, this is going to be great. And it was going to be my my fourth job as an anesthesiologist, so I wasn't new or naive to the whole process of interviewing and finding a job. But at the end of the day, you don't know about the job until you get to the job. So they told me what I wanted to hear. I stepped out on faith and hoped that that was really the job I was going to get. And yeah, it was definitely a nightmare. So you could only live and learn. You could only try. And then you have to just keep moving on.
And you faced a number of challenges in this new job. That was your dream job, right? That eventually led you to. But what was the first initial challenge that you faced?
This is so funny because, when you think about it, you stop to think about it. You ask a question, and I'm like, let me think about the initial one. And known how bad it was going to be just based on the first day. So the initial challenge was that the first day they just threw me in the pot, girl. They're like, oh, here, show up here and do this. I was like, what about orientation? What about this? What about, like, I have no idea where anything is. They're like, this is the address. Show up at 7:30, do the job. And I'm like, again, this is my fourth job. So almost every job that I've ever had, you would come in, you would do an orientation, they would give you a tour, they would kind of explain things. Okay, when you come to work tomorrow, you're going to come here, you're going to do this, you're going to check in here, whatever. None of that. And so basically they just like, go show up, and when you get there, someone will tell you what to do. And people were kind of just like, who are you? Like, why are you here? Like, nobody knew I was coming. Nobody knew anything. So it was pretty horrible. And then I ended up working like a 12-hour shift that day. And I was told that it was going to be 8-hour days, which was part of it being good. Like, okay, I'm not going to be working excessive hours. So on the very first day, no one knew who I was. I just thrown in there, and I worked a 12-hour day. And I was just like, wow, from the jump, I should have known that this was only going to get worse.
At the time, right, did you realize, like, okay, this is problematic? Or were you thinking like the rest of us, yeah, it's the first day, it's hard, I just got here, I just haven't got my feet wet yet. Like, what were you thinking at that particular time?
Listen, at the end of that first day, I was just so tired, I didn't give it too much thought. But I did think it was just like, okay, maybe, like, they just weren't really as prepared as they had let on, and it's got to get better. Like, I was hopeful, I think. And I think sometimes we do allow a little bit of hope to, like, blind us to what's really happening.
Wow. Unbelievable. So, of course, first day, you said you faced the challenges that you faced even from day one. So then subsequently, what other things, without going into too much detail, but what other things were happening?
It was just actually a lot. They were making a lot of changes. So they were like, oh, we told you X, Y, and Z, but actually we're going to be doing this. And I know we told you this, but we're going to be doing this. And so everything that they told me that made the job something I wanted was basically like changed after I started. And that resulted in me working longer hours, more weekends than what I agreed to, basically. And that's what really burnt me out, is that, like, they just kept adding more and more and more. And we're just like, be a team player. It's just going to be temporary, or this is just, we're in a phase or whatever. So that stuff started pretty early, and then just kept happening.
Wow. So throughout all of these, changes and up and down events and the lack of communication, because surely, obviously, like you share, there was definitely lack of communication and organization.
A lot of lack.
So, yes, a lot of lack and deficits. So did you have an ally at your job, right? Because sometimes we can get through these difficult jobs because we have, someone to talk to, or a support person, or someone we can just kind of like vent to. So did you have an ally there at all?
So initially I did, and I think that's also, I agree with you 1,000%. The reason why I was able to get through it in the beginning is because I had this woman. There was another Black woman physician that worked with me, and we would vent to each other and talk to each other. And so it kind of just felt like, although it sucked, you weren't alone. But then she told me, she's like, I'm done, girl. And I was like, no. And after she left, I mean, we're still friends, we still talk, but once she wasn't really in it with me, it became so much more evident and apparent that they were not going to be changing their ways. They're going to just keep trying to pacify and talk around the issues. And so that's when I was just like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do?
Man. Okay. So what was the pivotal moment that made you decide to seek help, right? Like to start your journey towards self-discovery and self-love. Like, did you blame yourself for what was going on? Did you think that, okay, maybe I'm just not applying myself more? Like, how did you come from, you're an anesthesiologist, you're a doctor. You're like, so you have to have some, you have a level of excellence. So how did you get to that point where you were doubting yourself and not believing in yourself and that you needed to discover who you were or who you are?
So one day I had worked 20 plus hours, and so I'm just getting at home at 3 a.m. I have to get back to work at 8 a.m. And I just was, I use that whole thing. You pull into the garage, I'm in my car, I'm home, but I just can't get out. I just could not get out of my car. I just started like raging out. I was like screaming and crying. I was just feeling heavy, lost and stuff. And I said, why is this happening to me? And that was pretty much my like breakdown moment. So I got out of my car and fell asleep for like 6 hours. And when I woke up the next day, I was like, I'm over this. Like, this is my life. I'm over it being like this. And I'm the only one who can change it. And so that's literally the day I started like my journey. I was like, okay, podcast, books, therapist, like I got to do it. I just started piece by piece, just getting myself together again.
Well, good for you. And I just applaud you for being so courageous because, I talk to friends of mine, there's this fake persona, right, of Black women strong all the time. And we can't quit. We can't quit because we have to push through. And all the while, all these crazy, not normal things are happening around us. But no. We're supposed to just push through. Keep pushing through because you can do it because we are strong, that we can handle it. And it's just like, what in the world? This is crazy. But it's a lot of us. And I mean, I just don't want to single out Black women and say it's just us. But of course, that's who I identify with, right? Mostly because that's who I am. But I have heard from other women, we just feel like we just can't quit, like because we could be deemed as a failure, or we're just not pushing hard enough, or we're crying. So we're crying, so that means we're weak because we're emotional. And when sometimes, excuse me, but the shit is just hard. It's just difficult.
Hard,
and it just makes no sense, right? Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, I commend you.
And that's where I was.
Yes, it's prioritizing yourself and putting yourself first. Now, you said you went to therapy, and that therapy contributed to your journey of overcoming your burnout and resilience. Well, how so?
So, again, you don't think about certain things until somebody asks you, right? So you asked me what was the initial thing. And I honestly had forgot about my very first day until you said initially, and I had to think all the way back. So my therapist would ask me questions, and it would remind me of old stories that I had forgotten about, like about those advisors, about those people who doubted me, and how I've actually have kept those stories in. And that's what's leading to like some of my self-doubt, my lack of confidence. And so she asked me questions that made me think. And then she also allowed a safe space for me to vent. And I think, like you said, we're so strong and so resilient, and we just keep pushing through that sometimes we don't share and we don't realize how much we're keeping in. And we don't know if it's because we think we should do it alone and be a superwoman, or for fear that someone will judge us, or the fear that we won't no longer be seen as perfect. But we keep so much in, and I was keeping so much in. And this was when I finally felt at peace, letting everything out.
Wow. Now, in addition to therapy, you also got involved in Pilates. And you said that played a significant role in your transformation. So can you talk about how Pilates helped you both physically and mentally?
Yes, honey, and I'm still a Pilates girl. I went today. I'm addicted now. So Pilates came up because it was something I always wanted to try, but I was always afraid to try. I thought that I would go there and I would suck at it and people would, know that I sucked. And so then in therapy, she was like, well, everybody starts out a beginner, period. Like nobody starts out an expert. And so just reframing those thoughts, I was like, I'm going to do it. I've always been so tired and so exhausted from working that I never had time to prioritize my health. But now that I'm making my mental and physical health a priority, I'm going to start working out. And so because Pilates is mostly laying on a mat or on a reformer, it's helpful because I really was tired. Like I was sitting on my feet for 10, 12 hours a day. I don't want to be standing up all evening trying to work out, but I still want to do something. And so this was my first step. I went to a free intro class, and it was just a very accepting environment, not what I thought it would be. I thought it was going to be like full of people who knew what they were doing and looking down at me. But a lot of us often imagine the worst case scenario for a lot of things. And we, hype ourselves up based on that. And so I just went in and just said, hey, I'm showing up. I'm going to try. And everybody there was so accepting, and it just felt great. So the initial challenge was just to do 2 classes a week for a few months to start prioritizing my physical wellness. But I could feel myself getting stronger. So I've stuck with it. And also in Pilates, like in my classes, they literally say, we're here now. Like you are here in your body. Forget about outside. Forget about your to-do list. Forget about what's waiting for you at home. And right now, just focus on what you're doing right now. Focus on your breath. Focus on your body and being good to yourself. And just hearing that while I'm working out has been so helpful for the mind-body connection, because I do think that we are moving so fast. A mile a minute, I could be doing 85 things at once, walking, texting, planning my shopping list, doing all these things. But it's just like the permission to not think about anything and just focus on yourself for 50 minutes. And I needed that.
Now, you talked about setting boundaries and how important and setting boundaries can be incredibly difficult. I know I've been working on myself to set boundaries, and it's incredibly hard because you feel guilty really quickly when you shouldn't be. But the boundaries are to protect you and your mental energy, and sometimes your physical energy. But
yes.
So for the listeners to understand, how did you learn to set and maintain boundaries, and especially in a demanding career, right? Because you have a long list of duties to perform. That's your job description. And then you have that other thing at the bottom, duties as assigned thing that people like to manipulate whatever they want to manipulate it into, right?
Yeah.
How did you learn to set and maintain boundaries, and what impact did it have on your life?
So, yes, boundaries are a struggle, and I think especially for Black women, because we can often be labeled quickly, right? Oh, she's difficult, aggressive, angry, just for trying to assert yourself or protect yourself. So an added layer of boundaries that we have to enforce. But I think the most important thing is I had to be self-aware of what is most important to me, and then I had to create the boundary around that. That way, you know what you're protecting, right? Like you can't just a boundary, like you said, is to protect you. So you're protecting yourself, and you have to think of it that way, as opposed to thinking about how others will feel about it, which is what we're usually saying. Like if I say no to them, then they're going to feel bad. But if you say no to yourself, you're going to feel bad, right? So why does their feelings matter more than yours? And that was a hard thing for me to get around, and I still say that to myself all the time. Like your feelings are just as important as their feelings. So like for me, with this job, and I guess making health was a priority. Like making myself healthy was a priority for me, so mentally and physically. And that required time, right? That required an hour for therapy. It required 2 hours a week for Pilates. And so when I was very clear that right now my mental and physical health is my biggest priority, then that means like, oh, can you stay later and work? No, because I have a class or I have therapy. And if I say yes to you, I'm saying no to me in this way. And so it's not easy, but it becomes easier when you know what you're protecting and you know why. And another thing is, once you start doing it, you might feel bad at first, but when you look around, you'll kind of realize like things are shifting. And so like you said, what impact has it made? Like for me, it made the impact of, I work out consistently now because I'm not always worried about work. I know that I'm going to tell them no and prioritize myself. But the bigger impact that I didn't even realize would happen is that because I now say it, I said, no, I can't do it. I have a class. Like now all of my coworkers know that I go to Pilates, and they know it's a priority. And so some of the younger girls are like, oh, the fact that you always just say, I have to do this, it made me feel comfortable just saying, I have to do this. And that wasn't even an intention, but it moved me so much to know that just by me saying, like, no, I have to go work out. It doesn't matter that it's not my kids or not my this. It's my personal time and I have to go work out. It's okay for them to do that. So by practicing it and doing it, it's not easy, but it changes your life. And you also don't know who else's life you're going to change by doing it. And so that it's just some things to keep in mind because it's definitely not easy. So you have to remain grounded as to the why, or you can easily be swept up in what other people want you to do.
What advice can you give to others who are feeling stuck or unfulfilled in their careers or personal lives? And how can they themselves begin their own journey towards resilience and self-discovery?
Yes. So I think that the number one thing to do is to just tap back into yourself. I think that we become the last person on our list, our to-do list, our kids, our spouse, our work, our house, they all become before us. So it's a really basic thing, but we neglect it. And that's just like to tap into yourself and say, like, what do I need right now? And what could I do that would just make me a little bit happier and bring me joy? And so for a while, I would just lay around and reflect and think about the times I had fun. And honestly, what really, really has helped is like, you have kids, but I don't have kids. I have a niece. And so I'm like, wow, I just like was playing Legos with her and I had so much fun. Like, I was just doing a puzzle and I had so much, it was like just coloring. But I hadn't done those things in years until she was old enough to ask me to do them with her. And so just tapping into like your childlike version of yourself and be like, what did I used to do for fun? And how can I incorporate more of that into my daily life? Like if you just take that one small action, it changes everything tremendously. Light the good candle, use the good mug, wear the good perfume. Like just start bringing those things in and infuse more joy every day.
You started a company, Forged in Fire. So what inspired you to start this company, and what exactly is its mission?
Yeah. So initially, it just started from my own recovery from burnout. I was in therapy, and I was encouraged to start sharing my story more, which kind of sparked everything. And so as I'm sharing my story for the first time, people were just like, oh, yeah, like, I feel that way too. And I was a bit surprised because, like I said, you always put on that strong front. So I'm looking around like, well, everybody else seems to have it together. Maybe I'm the only one feeling like this. But when I shared my story, I realized other people were feeling that overwhelm, that anxiety, that exhaustion. And so I was like, well, I'm going to go on a trip. I'm going to treat myself. I'm going to go here. And for the weekend, all I'm going to do is just take care of myself. And honey, the girls were like, yeah, I'm coming too. All the girls said they were coming too. And so my solo, plan, what was a retreat? My solo retreat to help myself recover from burnout became a retreat, and that ignited my business. And I'm just so happy that the women resonated and that they came and treated themselves and prioritized themselves and took care of themselves for, a few days to start. The mission is to serve us women, hardworking, high-achieving women of color. We're overwhelmed and exhausted by hustle culture, and we just need more engagement and connection so we know that we're not alone and that we can prioritize ourselves and improve our well-being.
I love that. I absolutely love it. So what can one expect from attending one of your retreats?
Yeah, so the retreats, they're not all the same. I try to change it up a little bit, but mostly I focus on trying to balance joy and fun activities, rest, and then engagement. So I want you to do fun stuff, but also have time to talk and get to know each other and time for yourself to rest. So I want people to come in as strangers and leave with budding friends. And I want them to come in, I don't want them to feel alone, but a lot of women do come in feeling alone. So if you come in and you feel like you're alone or isolated, I want you to leave knowing that you are connected and you have been seen, heard, and valued, and you have someone you can contact. Like, people are just like, oh, can I call you? I'm like, yes. Everybody exchange numbers. Everybody talk to each other. And let's leave knowing that we can talk to somebody about whatever's bothering us.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, I hope I have listeners out there who will sign up for one of your retreats, because many of us are going through burnout and suffering from demanding careers and not realizing that we can set boundaries and it's okay to do so. It's okay to prioritize ourselves, and we are not wrong for doing so. So I commend you, Dr. Smith, and I think that is absolutely amazing. If you could describe your life now in one word, what word would you use?
I would say it's evolving.
Evolving. Why that word?
It's evolving because I just feel like I am in such a growth phase. I had always had this dream of being a doctor, and I am a doctor, but I have grown beyond just that label. And I don't know where it's going to take me, but I know that it is going to be amazing if I just let the evolution happen.
I love that. Now, in your opinion, what are the best ways to build resilience?
So for me, I think the best way to build resilience is to trust yourself. When you believe yourself, you know that nothing can hold you back. And I think we have so much fear, resistance, and imposter syndrome because we don't trust ourselves. But if we pause for a moment and stop looking ahead, like, where we want to be and what we want to do, and just look behind at how far we've come, we would know how resilient we are and how much we're capable of. If you are already resilient, and just reminding yourself of that and trusting what you've done so far will build more resilience.
Wow. Well, Dr. Smith, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you. Can you do me a favor? Please take the time to let everyone know how they can participate in one of your retreats through Forged in Fire.
Yes. Like I said, I am evolving, so we are growing some things. I have some big things coming soon, but the best way to hear about them is to follow me on Instagram at SheIsFireForged, or to email me at hello@SheIsFireForged.com. I respond to all my emails. I love hopping calls with people. So if you really want to get in contact, email is the best way, but I also announce everything on social, so you'll be right in the mix for when everything is released.
Any last words of encouragement for the listeners?
Yes, I want you to remember that wellness and your well-being is about engagement and not withdrawal. I know it feels easy to just isolate, to sleep, or to be in your house, but the more you connect and talk with other people, the better you will feel. So I want you to talk to a friend today, and if you don't have anybody to talk to, go ahead and reach out to me. I'd love to hear more about you and what you got going on.
Well, Dr. Nikia Smith, thank you so much for being a guest on the show. I wish you and your family nothing but blessings and abundance. Please take care.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, are you really loving this podcast, or did you really enjoy this week's episode? Then please subscribe, like, rate, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. And remember to live, laugh, love, learn, and then repeat. See you in the next episode.